Welcome to this brand new series, American West Live. Every other week, we'll share a 10-minute slice of some of the best stories about how the American West came to be and California grew to become the fourth largest economy in the world. It all began in the mid-1800s, following an emigrant migration that began as a trickle, then became a massive movement, fueled by desire for land, economic opportunities, and escaping hardships. Each episode deep dives into a topic, providing insights, tales from the trails, and introduces you to the men and women who risked their lives to create one of the most dynamic places on Earth, our American West. So, let's get right to it. We begin with the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy Party of 1844 and Episode 1, First Wagons to California. We hope you enjoy.
Today, we're looking at what's often called a heroic migration, a really significant historical event. But maybe one where some key accomplishments kind of get overlooked sometimes. Our goal here is to, pull back that veil a bit, uncover some genuinely interesting facts, and maybe, just maybe, shed some light on a forgotten puzzle or two along the way.
That's a great way to put it. When we talk about these big migrations, it's easy to just see the massive scale. But hidden inside are just countless individual stories, right? Real ingenuity, real resilience. And what's so fascinating about this specific migration isn't just that it happened, which is amazing in itself, but how. How they managed it against, pretty considerable odds. Cross land, nobody really knew that, not for wagons anyway.
And the folks who tried before 1844 really show you how tough it was. Those wagon trains in 41, 43, they hit such obstacles they actually had to abandon their wagons, just leave them.
Which brings us to the Stephens-Townsend-Murphy Party, 1844. They're often kind of overlooked, aren't they?
They really are. But what they did was, revolutionary for the time. November 25th, 1844, they got wagons over the Sierra Nevada mountains. The first
wagons. Think about that. Wheeled vehicles over those mountains.
Huge. Their success proved it could be done. They basically blazed the trail, what became the California Trail, essential for everyone who came after, especially, when gold was discovered just a few years later.
It's weird how the Donner Party story, the tragedy, kind of eclipses them.
Yeah, historian Kevin Starr said something about the dystopian power of the Donner Party just overshadowing this incredible success story.
And our main source, it's mostly from Moses Schallenberger, right?
That's the primary account, yes. And who are these people? Not gold rush hopefuls, not yet.
No, these are like ordinary farming families from Missouri.
Exactly. Looking for land, a better future. And for Martin Murphy Sr., it was also about religious freedom. He was Catholic, faced difficulties, lost family. He wanted a place to practice freely.
Farm wagons, oxen pulling them, herding cattle. Pretty basic setup for crossing a continent.
Makes you wonder how they pulled it off when others failed, doesn't it?
Totally. What was their secret? Grit, luck, good choices.
Probably a mix of all that. Grit, definitely. Some good luck, seems like. But also really strong leadership. And crucially, they stuck together when making those impossible decisions.
That unity seems key under that kind of pressure.
For sure. And the leaders. You had Elisha Stevens, elected captain, described as a decisive frontiersman, kind of person you want in charge out there.
Right. And Dr. John Townsend, the educated one, maybe brought a different perspective.
Perhaps. And Martin Murphy Sr., the patriarch of that big family group. His personal drive, that quest for religious freedom, must have been powerful.
They also made a smart move early on, hiring guides.
Yeah, Caleb Greenwood, who was 80. Amazing. And Isaac Hitchcock, 64. Experienced guides, even if they didn't know the final stretch into California.
So they set off mid-May near Council Bluffs.
Following the known trails at first, Fort Laramie.
Independence Rock. That's where Mary Murphy Miller had her baby, right, on the 4th of July.
That's the one. Ellen Independence Miller. Talk about symbolic. Then they crossed the Continental Divide at South Pass. Pretty standard route so far.
A baby born on Independence Day heading west.
Oh, wow. But it wasn't all smooth sailing early on, was there? This shortcut idea?
Uh-huh. Isaac Hitchcock suggested a different way, supposedly shorter.
Uh-oh. The classic shortcut that isn't.
Exactly. It backfired, added about 20 miles of really harsh, dry country. It was a trial by thirst, really exhausting for people and animals. Took a real toll.
A tough lesson learned early, but they pushed on, made it to Fort Hall.
Right. And Fort Hall was the big junction. Most people there were heading north to Oregon, the Oregon Trail.
But not these folks. They turned southwest towards California.
A bold move. They were down to 11 wagons, maybe 50 people, including the baby. And now they were leaving the established trails behind, heading into territory where wagons hadn't gone before.
That's real pioneering, stepping off the map, basically. Imagine the uncertainty. but also that determination. And then near the Humboldt-Sing, around early October, they had this crucial encounter.
With the elderly Paiute man they called Truckee.
Huge language barrier, obviously. But they decided to trust him, and somehow he managed to tell them about a river flowing east out of the mountains up ahead.
The river that would eventually be named after him, the Truckee.
That's the one. It must have been such a moment of hope. Water and maybe a path through the mountains.
So they followed his advice.
They did. Another tough march, but the next afternoon, they reached it. The Truckee River. The relief must have been, well, unbelievable.
Finally, water. But following a river through mountains isn't always easy, is it?
Not at all. The Truckee wound through these canyons. They had to keep crossing it, sometimes like 10 times a day.
In wagons.
Yeah. Incredibly hard on the animals, on the wagons themselves. Plus, winter was definitely coming now.
Wow, the pressure must have been mounting.
Definitely. They reached more open ground, Truckee Meadows, near modern Reno. But the river went back into canyons heading west, days getting shorter. Then the first snow.
Okay, now it's serious. Snow in the mountains.
The clock was ticking, loudly. Early November, they get to this fork in the river near where Truckee, California is today. One way went southwest, the other went west, towards Donner Lake and the main Sierra Crest.
Looming ahead of them, granite walls, snow starting.
It must have looked impossible, and they knew getting all 11 wagons over before heavy snow hit, well, it wasn't going to happen.
So another brutal decision.
Yep. They decided to split up, temporarily. A smaller group, the fittest, on horseback, would push ahead fast to Sutter's Fort, try to get help, supplies. The main group, with the remaining wagons, headed west towards Donner Lake. But they quickly saw the reality. No way could they haul all those wagons over the summit in time.
So they had to leave some.
6 of them, right there at the lake. Imagine leaving behind wagons full of your possessions, your tools, everything you'd hauled 2,000 miles. Heartbreaking.
Just devastating. And people stayed with them.
3 men volunteered. Joseph Foster, Alan Montgomery, and young Moses Schallenberger. Only 17 or 18. Staying behind to guard the wagons as winter closed in.
That sounds incredibly risky.
Meanwhile, the main party pushed on with the last 5 wagons up these incredibly steep granite slopes.
How did they even manage?
They had to unload everything, carry their belongings by hand, then use double, even triple teams of oxen just to drag the empty wagons up the rock. Pure physical exhaustion.
Unbelievable effort. And then they hit the wall, literally.
Pretty much a sheer rock face, about 10 feet high. Straight up looked like the end of the line for the wagons.
So close, yet so far. What did they do?
This is where their ingenuity just shines. They found this narrow crack just wide enough for 1 ox at a time to squeeze through.
No way.
Yes. They painstakingly got the oxen up through the crack. Then, using ropes, they hauled the empty wagons vertically up that 10-foot rock face.
They hauled wagons up a cliff face.
That's what they did. That was the breakthrough, the moment they beat the impossible.
And because of that, November 25th, 1844.
They were over the summit, the first wagons ever across the Sierra Nevada. They'd opened the California Trail.
An incredible achievement. But they weren't exactly home free, were they?
Not even close. By early December, they were snowed in again, deep snow near Big Bend on the Yuba River. Another storm was coming.
Oh, come on. More.
Yeah. So another agonizing choice. Most of the men had to leave, push on through the snow, on foot this time, to Sutter's Fort to get help, leaving the women, the children, a few men behind in the snow.
Left behind in a winter camp, waiting. And Mary Murphy.
Incredibly, she gave birth again, right there in the snow camp. A daughter, Elizabeth Yuba Murphy.
A baby born in a snowbound camp in the Sierras. The resilience is just astounding. What about the men heading for Sutter's?
Brutal trek through deep snow, exhausted. But they made it, mid-December. Reunited with that advance party that went ahead earlier.
Relief, finally. They could get help back to the camp.
You'd think so, but there was a problem. John Sutter, the guy in charge at the fort, he was caught up in some local political mess, like a small civil war. And somehow Sutter convinced or, pressured 21 of the party's able-bodied men to join his fight.
Instead of rescuing their families.
It delayed everything significantly. Must have been torture for those men.
I can't even imagine. When did they finally go back?
It wasn't until mid-January they finally decided, okay, we have to go back to our families, gathered what supplies they could, and set out.
And the journey back, knowing how bad things might be.
Yeah, full of anxiety. And then they met James Miller and his son coming from the camp. Desperate.
What news did they bring?
Dire news, starvation at Big Bend. People were boiling strips of cowhide to eat. But amidst that horror, this moment of loyalty, one of the men returning, Dennis Martin, He remembered he'd promised Elizabeth Townsend he'd look out for her brother, Moses Schallenberger.
The teenager, still back guarding the wagons at Donner Lake, alone.
The very same. And Dennis Martin, he turned around, went back over the summit, alone, through the snow, to Donner Lake.
He went back by himself.
He did. And incredibly, he found Moses Schallenberger alive.
Yeah.
Having somehow survived the winter alone up there.
That's just a miracle.
Truly. So Martin and Schallenberger made their way back over the passes, back to the Big Bend camp. They were finally reunited with everyone else in late February 1845.
Late February, they'd been trapped since early December.
Yes. The ordeal was finally nearing its end. They just had that last push out of the mountains.
What a story. Just an unbelievable saga of endurance. George R. Stewart called 1844 a critical year, and their journey decisive, didn't he?
He did. And Joanne Libby just put it simply, they opened the West, for wagons anyway. They made the impossible possible.
And the most incredible statistic through all of this, all the hardship, the near starvation, the brutal conditions.
Not one person died on that entire 2,000-mile trip.
It's almost hard to believe.
And not only that, the party actually grew by 2, with Ellen Independence and Elizabeth Yuba being born. To go through all that and end up with more people than you started with, it's just extraordinary.
It really makes you think about the impact of just one group, one successful journey, how it literally changed the map, changed the path of the country.
Absolutely. And it kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What other stories are out there maybe overlooked like this one? Other feats of courage, leadership, people sticking together, maybe getting a bit lucky. That completely changed things.
Yeah, definitely makes you think about those hidden histories, those forgotten journeys,
Yeah.
and the sheer power of human resilience, what those ordinary families accomplished. It's truly something to ponder.
Look for more American West Live deep dives every other week right here, or head over to our website at historyxp.org or YouTube channel at History Expeditions. We provide links in the show notes. From all of us at History Expeditions and the Sunnyvale Heritage Park Museum, we look forward to seeing you on the trail.